Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've just come back from seeing Unfriended Dark Web, which is a sequel to Unfriended, which came out in, I think, 2014, 2015.
Oh, I didn't know it was a sequel. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's not a direct sequel. It's a sort of spiritual sequel that retains the same style and sort of ideas.
Okay. So
as far as I know, I've not seen the original, but that's my understanding. Because I think in the original, everyone dies. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
It's one of those sorts of things. So, what Unfriended Dark Web is a... You could call it found footage. I'd rather call it desktop, like a desktop film. Because found footage, to me, sort of says, like, home video or something like that.
It's not a found footage film, that's for sure.
But I think that's the kind of umbrella these things go under. But actually, there are sort of all these different versions. What this is, though, is... It's a film that is told entirely through a screencast of the main character's computer screen. Yes. He's got a new laptop that he's stolen, and he's on Skype with his friends. He's on Facebook doing this, that, and the other. He's talking to people, and eventually he starts to figure out that he's the person whose laptop he's stolen is into some pretty shady stuff, and he's in over his head. But it's all told through this unbroken screencast. Yes. That brings in all these different kind of websites and forms of media.
I thought that was amazing.
It's not the first one that's done this. Like I said, the previous Unfriended also did it, and there is some history of other short films and kind of music videos and things using a similar aesthetic. There's a very famous within kind of film circles, video essay by Kevin B. Lee called Transformers: The Pre-Make.
Right.
Which was, I think, it was Transformers 4. Before Transformers came out, Kevin B. Lee scoured the internet for loads and loads of footage of people who had visited the various sets where it was being filmed, and took all their footage of the kind of stunts from afar, and made this like 20-25 minute documentary out of all this stuff that was based on them and based on websites that had footage of the film and stuff like this. So he made this thing which was a sort of exploration of kind of the interplay between small screens and big budget movies and the way people interact with movies before they're even out. Very interesting. Anyway, there is some precedent for a film of this style, but in kind of mainstream cinema, not so much. It's a little bit of a niche thing.
I found I had never seen it before, and I found it, very innovative. I thought it was kind of fascinating the way that the story was unfolding, the way that the narrative information was being given to you, and also how it reproduced some of the ways that we now interact with media. So, in a sense, all of the viewing is distracted. There are several things going on at the same time. I mean, not just in terms of the image and what's happening kind of in front of the screen and what's happening in the background that the person sitting at the computer might not be aware of, but also just all the other kinds of things that are going on the screen. So moving forth, from different Facebook accounts and the notion of privacy, of who knows what when you're having a Skype chat, right? And all of that stuff I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah, and it's quite intuitive as well. I mean, there are very subtle things about the ways in which So, for instance, he's talking to his girlfriend, and they're having a little bit of a disagreement, and he says, "Talk to me, please talk to me, please talk to me," and they're doing it through Facebook messages. So he's typing, and then as he says that, you see the little 3 dots coming up from her, saying that she's typing something, and then they go away. So he's watching her think about talking to him and then not. Yes. And that means something in itself. Yes. And that is one of these subtleties of these kind of forms of communication that we've got very, very used to now. But you don't see, you see portrayed every now and again, but this film is kind of built around those in a way.
I thought it was very innovative, because I remember a few years ago, there were all of these teen films that were just using chat, like words on screen in the form of chat between characters. And I thought, oh my God, this is so interesting. This is going to transform the way stories are told, right? Because you can now put text on screen in these really interesting ways. And, and actually, what I thought the potential of it was much more interesting than what, in fact, I was seeing. But nonetheless, this is at a whole other level, at a whole other conceptual level, really.
Yeah, it's really, really sort of complete and sort of hermetically sealed sort of environment of this type of filmmaking.
That said, whilst I found the concept fascinating, I wasn't that involved in the film.
Really?
Yeah.
I found myself fairly involved. I guess because I've said what the premise is, I guess we can say spoilers are going to be coming up from now on. Yeah. Basically, the idea is that these group of kids on Skype are in over their heads.
Yes.
And particularly with a group of with a kind of shady society based on the dark web, which is obviously the subtitle of the film is Dark Web, and this computer has a program which accesses the dark web. So through that, then they start uncovering some very threatening things. Spoilers here on, let's say. Yes. I mean, that's very vague. Spoilers here on.
I must declare kind of my interests, really, because, I think I should say I really don't like horror. Yeah. I don't like to be scared. The only reason why I'm watching it at the moment is because I think it's the most interesting genre around, really. For many reasons, kind of formal reasons as well as kind of the social critiques that it does. So I'm seeing it for professional reasons, but it's really not. It's really not something I enjoy. Yeah, kind of unlike a thriller or a western or a musical, which I just I love the form of it, right? It has to be really bad for me not to get some pleasure out of it. These films, I'm also so easily jolted.
Yes. You're a jumpy boy. I'm tempted to agree, but actually what I think is the case is that there is so much mediocre and bad horror, and I don't pretend to be like an aficionado or anything like that at all. I'm not. I mean, that's why we got Matt Denny on a few weeks ago to talk about Hereditary. Like, he's a guy who knows horror properly,
Yes.
I'm not like that at all. But I don't like to be scared if it's kind of bad. But actually, if a horror film is really good and gets under my skin, then and it is terrifying me, then obviously that's unpleasant because I'm being terrified. But there's nothing really like it, and I enjoy that.
Okay.
That thrill.
Well, I don't, right? So I'm just saying, that's where I'm coming from.
But but what you mean is even a good horror that is actually working properly.
Yes.
You just still don't like.
Well, yeah. I mean, I still don't like the experience of having been scared.
Sure.
Really, and in a way, sometimes the better it is, the more I dislike it.
Yeah.
Right? So all of that, to say the kind of my engagement or my lack of engagement, which is usually at least my base point to begin thinking about films, is kind of like distorted in relation to horror by that fact. Yeah, that kind of, my responses, to myself kind of mean something other than that what I would normally kind of take them to mean. So I think for example, not being engaged in this film could be, for those reasons instead of the film being unengaging. Though I did find it unengaging. I mean, so the premise is that this young man steals a computer. Well, he says he bought it. Then he said that he saw it in a cyber cafe hanging around for weeks and finally took it, really, because no one was claiming it.
Yeah.
So, and, what happens is that in the process of using this computer, he begins to find out that he's somehow involved in the dark web, that women are being killed in monstrous ways, that there's like dozens and dozens of videos kind of demonstrating how they're being killed, and that $10 million has been put into the account of this computer to perform the next murder.
Essentially, the $10 million I think is built up over a long series of these, but ultimately that's the case.
Well, I'm heading to kind of the halfway point of the plot, because then what happens is, the guy who's chasing his computer finds his girlfriend, finds everybody else, in fact, and they become constantly under surveillance. And I wanted to bring up that point because kind of the film feeds into the paranoia that we all have about electronic media, about Facebook, about being under surveillance from our own computers and in our own homes, right? And kind of, being easily traceable. Kind of we live in a world where, now we can't hide, the way that at least theoretically we thought we could hide before, surveillance cameras and mobile phones. And there's nowhere in the world that you can be lost with if you have a mobile phone. So the film feeds into all of that, paranoia about those things, or maybe it's not paranoia, maybe, it's true, but it certainly kind of depicts that world. And so there's three things. There's that world where we're constantly under surveillance. There's a gamer's world, and I think there's a language of games that's being deployed in the film. And then there's also the mystery of a dark web full of crime and secrecy, and something that only people who are like really expert at using computers and usually involved in a kind of a criminal underworld where all kinds of sordid and horrid things happen, have access to. And so the film connects all of those three elements, and the game begins, really.
Yeah, so it plays on the idea of the dark web being this incredibly scary, hidden aspect of the world in which, and it's true that the dark web is a place to buy drugs, and to hire assassins if you want, and to sexual crimes are bought and paid for, and all this. It has all that, but I mean, it's also true that the dark web is something that people like you and I, who are not criminals, can and should be using, to be honest, because you have access to everything else that's already on the internet that we use every day. It's just that it does a good job of hiding you. So actually, like, if we are kind of scared of Facebook tracking us and hiding us and stuff, like it's not a bad place to be to get a slightly better level of protection. Like, the reason that crime hangs out there is because it's good at hiding people. Anyway, but obviously the film plays on the scary sort of aspect of it, the criminal aspect, and I think it creates a really good kind of level of threat. I mean, my heart was pounding at points, and I don't think the film builds up kind of huge amounts of tension. Maybe 1 or 2 points it does, but I'm thinking maybe the bit where the girl has to choose between her mother and her fiance. That's a really effective scene. Actually.
It didn't work on me.
Really?
Yeah.
The countdown.
I thought it was forced, and also I just thought, silly girl, kind of, make a choice. How it's going to develop, right? Like
maybe, but it got a good reaction from the audience as well. I mean, there were points that because it's. What the hackers, the people in charge of the computer who are kind of taking over, do is they show a recording of the couple that they were unaware of being taken, because they hacked into the computer and accessed the microphone and such. So they show this recording that they've stolen, they've taken and stolen, that shows this couple in love, and the one girl saying, "I don't want you to have to choose." And then they replay that, "I don't want you to have to choose," and they turn it into, okay, here's your fiance in the subway station, here's your mother dying of cancer in the hospital, choose which one. And it sets up this, it's when you see those two kind of video feeds come up on the screen, there's a gasp from the audience member behind me. Oh God, you could tell like this is going to be a bit, and I agree that it could have been resolved slightly differently. The film's ultimate project is to kill everybody in the most cruel way it can.
Yes, I thought it was kind of nihilistic in that sense, actually.
But I did think it had effective sequences of that sort, and I think it created some real tension and threat at points. I mean, I didn't care about the characters, but I was invested in it. I wanted it when it sets up that the guy's girlfriend is deaf and she doesn't know that she's being followed, and the main character's whole thing is protecting her.
Yes.
Really at the expense of other things. At some points,
I was unmoved and unconvinced.
I wanted her to live.
Yeah. I think more could have been done with that. And in fact, actually. So, spoilers again. I mean, this is a film in which everybody dies, right? And you find out at the end of the film that really it's all been a game for other people, and that they've been the game. Kind of offing them has been the game.
the computer was actually left as bait,
Yeah.
so that this game could take place.
So this game of which they are the victims.
Well, yeah, because the kind of the overarching joke really is what it is that these guys who are friends, they have game night on Skype and they play Cards Against Humanity and other things over Skype, and then it turns out that their game night is part of this evil dark web society's game night,
Yes.
where a lot of money is wagered on. It's great, actually, that final pull-out from the screen at the end of the film that shows all these other things going on, and it has odds, the over-under, on whether the kid's going to try and save his girlfriend, or which one of the wife or the mother the girl's going to choose. It has odds on this thing, and it shows the bets. That's quite good fun, actually.
Well, it might be good fun on a certain kind of conceptual level, but I think it's a measure of how uninvolving the characters were and their plight in terms of the way that it was presented, that actually the film can safely off all of them, leave us smiling at these strangers and at this idea of a game, and that's it. So actually, we don't care enough about any of the people who were actually killed to feel it as a terrible loss at the end of it. And I think,
yeah, maybe. I don't think loss exactly is what I am looking to feel in a film like this. If I'm kind of thinking that people are going to start dying, it's more that I want to see interesting or creative or sort of fun ways in which they die.
But in order for you to feel any of that, you have to have the wish that they survive, that there's something at stake in their death or or survival. And the thing is that this film does it so casually, and it can do it so casually because actually it doesn't set up a situation where you really care.
Maybe not. Like I say, I think it's an investment in the characters is not quite so much what I'm looking for. And I was invested a little bit, but it's more.
So what were you invested then? If you weren't?
Well, like I say, I was invested in Amata, the deaf girl. Kind of her innocence in the whole thing and wanting to stay alive. And I had a level of investment in that choice scene. I felt the sort of, I suppose what I'm saying is the fact that I responded to the choice that she'd been given in that scene was probably a product of just how fucked up it was. Like that's the first really cruel thing going on. That's like directly about them. Everything else they've been, every other kind of threat to them at that point has been slightly vaguer. It's just been like, do this or they die. Do this or your girlfriend dies, which is just kind of a pretty general threat. But this is like you've got 30 seconds to choose between one or the other, and that's a product of that. But it's also a product of the fact that you could tell that these two characters are in love. You can tell obviously the girl loves her mum and is distraught at what she's going through in the hospital. So I felt for that character as well and the choice that she was being forced to make. So I had certain levels of investment, but I agree with you that it's not, you're not going to sort of. Well, I tell you what it is. It's not that I loved the characters or anything, but I bought the whole thing.
Yes.
I bought the whole setup of the film and the way it was being told. I didn't actually for a second not believe what was happening.
Yes, okay, that's a good way of putting it. And that's another avenue of thinking about it because, for me, I was really fascinated by the beginning, by the whole film being done as a screen grab and, by the focusing on different elements and by the constant interruptions of a ping from Facebook and Skype and having to remove oneself from the group and deal with that. I thought that was really fascinating because actually I also see at least kind of my own kind of interactions with social media to be kind of like that. It's not like it's partly distracted, it's partly multitasking. There are always several things going on in your screen at the same time, and I thought that was fascinating that the film can show that, and still keep your attention and still keep
and actually tell an effective story.
And tell a story
despite the fact everything is so distracted.
That's right. I thought that was fascinating at the beginning. And then I thought kind of the film, was very interesting kind of conceptually, really. Right? So I think that's what kind of grabbed my attention. And I didn't expect all of the characters to be bumped off at the end, really.
You thought they'd be a survivor?
I thought there'd be a survivor.
A final girl?
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting because the film in a way leads you to think that, so it kind of bumps off, the least pleasant character, as the first one, So you think that there's going to be something like that. But I think it's also very gruesome. I mean, the film posits this person who's killing young women on demand, who basically sells their death to a syndicate. So they choose what type of death the young girl suffers. And all of those things I really kind of found quite...
just too gruesome for you.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I think that's a taste thing rather than a problem with the film. I mean, I like that level of gruesomeness.
Yeah.
I don't think it's overdone actually, but I think
it isn't overdone.
It's not overly graphic. Rather, let's put it like that. It's not overly graphic, but the film does bring up this society, or one of the members of this society wants the next girl who's killed to have a hole drilled into her head and to have something live put into it, and that's just coming up as words on a screen, in a chat. Do this, do this, do this, and you're going, oh, but it's the opposite of graphic. There's no graphics in it; it's text.
Yeah, actually, almost everything happens off screen in that sense. So the film is very good at kind of relieving some of that tension, because really the situation is so gruesome that if they'd actually shown it on screen, it would have been just too much. So I thought that was kind of tactful.
I think that's an interesting word to use in relation to the film. It shows you, it doesn't go overboard, and actually I didn't feel like I wasn't showing anything I didn't feel like it missed things, I didn't feel like, I wish it had shown this, that, or the other, and I didn't feel like it was also... It's funny, with a film like this, and with found footage in general, if we include it more generally in found footage, what you often feel is that the filmmaking, because it has to include the way that the film is made as in its story, you often feel like you're noticing sort of, oh well, they've had to do something here to put the camera there for the film, and it's that wouldn't really happen. And I felt so little of that in this. It felt really natural.
It did. Though I also felt that all of the participants in the game who don't know that they are themselves the game, were kind of crude types, that were also, kind of actors' moments. And you felt, most of them being actory with their actors' moments, right? So, for example, the girl who has to choose between her mother and her girlfriend, right? It's like, yeah, you could just see a young actress working herself up to this, right?
But it didn't feel like. So, I mean, it's a tough bit, right? Because she's having to act so distraught and in shock and in pain and everything that she's having to convey, and she's having to do it in a long extended take because she's on screen for this whole 30 seconds or more. That's tough,
She's not up to it.
But I didn't think she was awful. I mean, I didn't think anyone was actually awful.
Well, awful is the wrong word, but I just think it really comes across as kind of young actors being actory and having their moment in a film.
Yeah, maybe.
I wasn't convinced. I didn't feel that there was anything at stake with them as people.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, they were just kind of like a plot function, and they were almost kind of like a cliched plot function, and I wasn't really kind of engaged with the film, So from halfway through, so from the moment that a killer is revealed and the plot changes to him just having to keep his girlfriend alive, right, and then the group interacts and so on, I actually kind of felt slightly disengaged, and the only moment that I really perked up was the very end, where it's revealed that it's all been a game and that they are the game. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, what I found really fascinating about the film was just the whole beginning setup with it as a computer screen and the way that played out, and then kind of the twist at the end.
But everything in the middle.
Everything in the middle, I found kind of almost by numbers, really,
I think it's if you forget the stylistic way in which it's been made, it's certainly true that there's nothing hugely surprising about the plot of the film, the way things develop.
Yes.
The fact that someone's given this horrible choice to make, or just the way that people are being kind of picked off, or the way that kind of this one guy, this part of this society, is kind of stalking around and getting into these people's places. It's nothing hugely surprising about those certain things, but I think it's all kind of put together well. I think actually the film starts off very slowly. I mean, probably because I'd seen things of this nature before and you hadn't, I was less interested in just the setting up of the screencasting sort of filmmaking style, right? I mean, it was once the sort of interactions with the dark web character got going and the main character started to get in over his head that's when the film perked up for me. I'd say when it perked up is when it shows you this really natural, believable, just computer screen, and all the stuff that happens and notifications coming in from the top right. It's a Mac screen, by the way, for anyone using Windows.
Yes.
You might be as familiar with it, but it's very familiar to Jose and I because we use Macs. And so the dot coming in at the bottom, notifications on the top right, switching between screens, all very, very natural, and you buy it all. And having Facebook conversations, and then in the Facebook conversation, the dark web guy says something, and it shows up in black, in text with a black border rather than blue, which is what you normally get. And that's just an invention for the film. And you go, ooh, something's going on, or he glitches out when he's on video, and he clearly has some sort of magic technique of hiding himself on video, which again completely invented and doesn't work in real life at all. But it is very, very interesting and cool for the film.
Do we know that there's nothing like that?
Yeah,
in real life?
it's nothing like that.
I thought that the Facebook thing where they photoshopped one person's face onto the other was too quick to be real.
That kind of thing is accurate. That's actually the most believable thing is kind of photoshopping a picture. I mean,
I know, but it would take
really
hours.
But it happens in 10 seconds in the film. So obviously it's done slightly faster, nonetheless. Though, but what I'm talking about is the real inventions of these kind of magic dark web things. He can write a message in a different font and then delete it. Oh my god, it's super cool.
That was all. I love that. That was all interesting.
That's when the film got going because I was like, this is the invention. This is the creepy stuff.
I wanted to mention one of the things that really caught my eye, which was actually just a name that came up in the credits. And that was the Russian director Timur Bekmambetov, who produced the film. And I just wanted to bring it up because I'm not a fan of his films per se, but I remember having a moment watching them where the visuals were so exciting. He does kind of this mind-bending, kind of space-bending, curving distortions of geographical space. So in Wanted, there's a thing where they shoot bullets and the bullets kind of move around space. Right?
Oh yeah, they curve the bullets.
Yeah, they curve the bullets, and it's a really dazzling kind of visual technique, which I kind of found out that he'd used in Night Watch and Day Watch, the Russian vampire films that he made, and so kind of he's got dazzling kind of action sequences that are also conceptually dazzling, and so I was just fascinated to see his name attached. Actually, it's a weird thing, but my eyes just perked up, and it almost made me think, oh, why is he involved with this? And kind of just, lend more credence to the film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing that the other producer of the film, which I think lends just as much credence, is Jason Blum, Blumhouse Productions, which is this. It's been going for 10 years, maybe a few more, maybe 12 years, and it's this. Blumhouse Productions is this small, low-budget horror film company, basically, that has had its name on quite a lot. It's become kind of a big name in low-budget horror, if there is such a thing. That things like The Purge and Paranormal Activity. I mean, Paranormal Activity is one of the most successful films of all time. It cost $15,000 and made nearly $200 million. So Blumhouse Productions has got to be just about the most profitable company in history.
Yes.
Just on percentage terms, but I think Insidious as well. A few other. Well, they make quite a lot of horrors, and they've also made quite a lot of horrors that have just gone nowhere.
Right.
But they've made some kind of series that have got some traction, and I think just I like them as a company because I like sort of their attitude seems to be to give their filmmakers quite a lot of freedom, really. I mean, you see it as well. I think is it A24 and a few other like I say smaller sort of production companies that have been making big names for themselves by handing over a lot, and they make films on lower budgets, so there's less risk involved, and they don't tend to handle distribution themselves. I think they go to like Paramount or whoever to distribute them. I think this is distributed by Universal. But Blumhouse is one of these names where you're always going to get something interesting when you see them.
Well, that's kind of
is.
an interesting conjunction of names. I understand that this is the first film by the director. What's your
the writer-director Steven Sisko.
Yes.
He's written before The Grudge, The Grudge 2, Texas Chainsaw 3D, but this is his first directorial film. It's interesting as a director because I don't know how... It's tough to sort of say how much you can assign to him, really, because the style is not his own. From what I understand, it builds off the last film's style. And there's also a film called The Bay, which came out in 2012, which is similar in some ways. It's again kind of found footage desktop type film, which again I watched recently. It was an interesting movie. I liked it. It's a horror though, so you shouldn't watch it. But it was an interesting film. It's different insofar as it's not done really as a screen cast, but it's done as a blog, like an environmental blog. About a sort of disaster that happened because of industrial this, that and the other, some sort of spillage I think in like Chesapeake Bay, and then monsters happen. And it's all done through people's home videos and stuff, and this girl has collected all this footage, and so that was an interesting movie, The Bay.
Can we talk about it? I mean, what is the film playing against at the moment at the multiplex? So obviously the big film is Mission Impossible, and there's Ant-Man and the Wasp. What else is playing? How is it being programmed, I suppose, is my question.
Let's have a look what's out. I mean, Mission Impossible is still on, but the big screens are being taken over by Ant-Man and the Meg at the minute. So the Meg and Ant-Man are the big films. There's something called The Darkest Minds, which we've not seen, which I think is like a teen superhero type thing.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
Mamma Mia 2. Which we've assiduously avoided so far.
Well, you've assiduously avoided it. I want to see it, but I just haven't gotten around to it.
Well, we'll see it then. We'll see that. That's a promise that I've made on a podcast.
Yes.
Mission Impossible is still there. Incredibles 2 is still there. The Festival. Oh God, that's out. I don't want to see that. The Festival, the film that you like the look of.
Yes.
From the In-Betweeners guys.
Yes.
And then some small things. There's a couple of animated movies. Hotel Transylvania 3. Teen Titans, go to the movies.
I'd like to see that too.
So I mean, I don't think it's well. There certainly doesn't seem to be any horror out of it apart from Unfriended.
So that's kind of where this is fitting in terms of the rest of the program, and that's interesting actually. And I suppose in that sense, it does present an option, and it's an intelligent option. I mean, I think kind of the film does deal with like issues. And it's got kind of interesting ideas in terms of both storytelling, and I think it also has, kind of something to say about the world that we live in and our fears within that world. So I didn't enjoy it very much, and it didn't hold me, but it does have those things going for it, I think.
Yeah, I think it is smart. It's conversant with the world in which it's kind of being made and the people it's being made for. It's not a gimmick, right? It's like it looks like a gimmick. It looks so much like a gimmick, but it really isn't.
I think that's an important point. It
actually builds on what it's doing really kind of fully. And what you say about it being the fears it brings up about privacy and the way that we can be monitored.
Yes.
And the way that people are. I mean, we're sitting here right now with a laptop in front of us, which we could be being watched through. You never know.
Yes, you could.
But you never sort of.
I'm always surprised actually because you turn Skype and it's there, and as soon as somebody rings you, you appear, right?
Yeah.
So. Kind of, you have obviously been somewhere in the background being filmed. I mean, you are.
And obviously, then in Unfriended, it ramps it up and makes it into a horror thing.
Yeah.
Which again we've seen. I think there's at least one episode of Black Mirror that does something similar with that. So it's not the most original idea. I mean, there's a joke in Limmy's show about putting tape over the screen and all the various cameras in the world and having to put tape over them so that you can't be watched. But
it might not be original, but it certainly kind of makes you understand the reasons people might be paranoid about it.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
fearful of it. Actually, not even paranoid. Honestly fearful.
yeah, it's almost enough to make you stop wanking in front of your laptop.
And on that note, a final word on the film.
I mean, I'm interested to see the first one as well because I think the first one was more in the realm of cyberbullying than privacy. So I think there's like another aspect to the modern cyber world that the first film takes on that this.
Okay,
doesn't.
so from my point of view, then I guess I could say that I didn't enjoy watching this one very much. It nonetheless and paradoxically has made me now want to see the first film.
Yeah, one thing I'd be interested though in is how well it works on a TV or on a smaller screen, because some horror, I think, well, some films, but I think particularly with horror, because it's horror's where you can get these experiments done very cheaply and kind of gruesomely and effectively, is how well they work in different places. So Paranormal Activity, I remember when it came out, which was, I'm sure you know it, but Paranormal Activity is the film which is based on the guy setting up, again it's found footage, but he sets up a video camera in his room at night to try and capture ghosts, basically. And then you get these long takes of just very little happening, and then like a door closes and you go, oh! But I remember in the cinema, I really didn't find that very effective. I thought it was really boring, actually. It was interesting, but boring. Not scary. And then I watched it at home when it came out on DVD. I watched it on my computer, and I was sat, like, elbows on the desk, like 2 feet from the thing. And it was terrifying, because I was on my own, it was a dark room, and I was sat right up close to it. But it was as if it was like a video on YouTube or on a torrent website that you downloaded that was just called like paranormalactivity.mpeg, and it was like, what's this creepy thing? And it was so different in the home environment than it was in the cinema. Whereas this film is, I think, would be the other way around. I think when you're locked into the cinema and it's right there and it's this kind of big laptop screen is right in front of you, I think it's really interesting. I don't know how interesting it would be on a smaller screen. For me,
horror only ever works for me at a cinema, because I'm just too much of a scaredy cat, really. I mean, watching horror on a computer, the first thing I do is I press the pause button and go make myself a coffee. And it could be like a half hour or days later before I return to, or never. Right, so actually I think there's an endurance aspect of watching a film. Like, you're there until the end, and the filmmakers have control of time, right? And they're building rhythms through which to kind of scare you. And as soon as I take control over it, I destroy all of that filmmaker's work.
Well, you've got to be brave enough to decide not to. Okay. I've been watching an awful lot of found footage recently, because I realised that there was a whole kick of these found footage movies. Not all of them horror. I mean, there was that thing Chronicle, which was a superhero thing.
Yes, I like that.
And there was a whole so there was a lot of these films which I'd been catching up with and watching just on my laptop. And with the horror ones, like, they are scary, some of them, but you have to be brave enough to just not press pause.
Well, I'm not, and actually, I think for me it's true of a lot of film viewing on TV. I don't know if I'm getting more distracted or something, right? But I find, for example, that if I'm working on a film, if I'm writing on a film, if I watch in a cinema, it takes me an hour and 40 minutes or however long the film is to watch it. If I'm watching it at home, it could take me 4 hours. Like, you pause, you rewind, Yeah. So it's a completely different experience. And one of the things that is sacrificed is the filmmaker's control over time.
Yeah. It's, well, yeah. I mean, let's say it's as a rule, it's better to see a film in the cinema. That's where it's supposed to be. You're locked in, and it's nice and big, and it's a dark room, and you can't press pause. Like, you don't have any control, and that's the point. Ceding control. That's one of the points.
So I think that's a general rule, but I also think that it applies to horror more than any other genre I can think of, actually.
Yeah, that might be the case. Well, that lack of control is also important in making you feel more scared.
Yes.
If you feel like you can't stop it.
That's right.
I mean, and what I was saying about Paranormal Activity is true, but that is very specific to Paranormal Activity. I can't think of another film I've seen where I thought this only works on my computer. It was an interesting one, that. But Unfriended was decent, and I would, once you've seen Ant-Man and Mission Impossible,
and The Incredibles 2.
Oh yeah, Incredibles 2. It's a decent horror movie, and I liked it.
Yes, it kind of is. It is decent, and I did enjoy it. I've not enjoyed it. I'm glad I saw it. You know, and like you say, it's not a gimmick. It's kind of like, you know, a serious film in a way. On the other hand, the film's currently playing at the local screens. It's about 4th or 5th best.
Yeah, sure. But it's probably like second most interesting. I mean, I'd say it's more interesting than Ant-Man. It's more interesting even than Mission Impossible because of the way it's made and the way it tells its story. But obviously Mission Impossible is superior.
Yes. And so is Ant-Man. And so is, and you know, Incredibles 2 is like vastly superior. It's better than Chomp.
Yeah. Or the Meg, as it's known.
Oh yeah, sorry, the Meg.
Even though Chomp's a much better title, we're not actually allowed to call it that, unfortunately.
All right, so thank you very much for listening. We are on Twitter, Facebook, eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
YouTube.
Yes, we now have a YouTube channel.
Don't expect to see any video of us. It's just if we put the podcast up there.
Yeah. So,
but it's more convenient for some people.
Yeah. So thank you very much for listening, and do give us feedback if you like. We particularly value disagreements, so feel free to post them. And thank you very much for listening.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye bye.